Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Well, it is officially 9 a.m. so you can actually get.
Okay, Farah, unmute yourself. Okay, it's 9 o'clock and I call to order the PZC Regulatory Review Committee meeting of September 17th. And members present are Aho, Cooley, and Ward. We have minutes from March 11th. April, May, June, July, August. Wow, that's 6 months ago. It doesn't seem like 6 months. It seems like a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
We went back, we checked. Sandy got this agenda started for me and she put the minutes in. I'm like, oh my goodness, has it really been that long? I'm like, it's really been that long.
Yeah. Time has no meaning anymore.
I think only Luann and I were there. So I moved to approve the minutes of
Second.
March 2nd, and that's so it's unanimous.
Yep.
We probably don't have any public comment coming in.
There does not seem to be any public here, so
Okay,
and we
good.
did put the call-in number on the agenda. No one asked me for the video link, so
So we can go straight to cannabis.
we can go straight to cannabis. So a lot of there are a couple of things that were not in your PZC packet. So I'm going to pull one of them up and try and share my screen. So just bear with me because we're still learning Zoom here with sharing the screen.
One thing before we start, maybe you can help us understand why the sole dispensary in Mansfield closed.
I don't think it did.
That's what I was told at the DTC meeting a couple of days ago.
I know that they were acquired by another company, but I didn't think they closed.
Okay, I'm only hearing it secondhand or third hand, but
I will ask Cynthia because I
Okay.
think she was more involved with them than I was. And again, I think what I had heard was that the company that had done that one was acquired by another company, but I didn't think they were closing the dispensary. So
it seemed like it'd be a strange time to close.
Yeah.
So can everyone see this?
Yep.
My screen? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So we'll try and make this bigger just in case. As I said, I'm still getting the getting the hang of Zoom compared to GoToMeeting. So one of the things after your last discussion at the PZC that I did was, and I advised the town manager of what you had discussed in terms of wanting to do outreach to committees and have a joint meeting with the council. And I kind of sent him that framework. And he said, great, what's the time frame? And I was like, oh goodness, let's put times on this. So this is what I came up with, and he thought it looked good. The one thing we did talk about was scheduling your joint meeting between PZC and town council for post-election. My thought on that was, I don't want to go down a road and then I have no idea what's happening in terms of who's running for the two bodies, and then have new people go, what do you mean this is what you're proposing to do? So
that's a good idea. Yeah.
So, the goal for this month, we'll see how much we can get through today, is to kind of come up with a framework and approach to how we want to regulate it. In October, Jen and I will work with the advisory committees to get their input on the framework. And then we will bring all of that back to a joint meeting of the PZC and town council in November. And if we have buy-off or buy-in and everyone agrees on that kind of the approach that we're recommending, then we will draft the actual regulations and bring those back to you to initiate changes to our regulations. There may be some things the council wants to look at. And then we're looking at public hearings in February. I purposely did that because I know folks don't like us having hearings on controversial items when UConn's not in session. So, depending on how quickly we got this done, January might have been a possibility. We thought we'd stick with February. So that does put us ahead of the March 21st
Mhm.
timeframe. So
May I ask a question before we get into
Yeah.
all of this?
Yeah.
In order to do any of this, and maybe I'm the only one that needs to be educated, but before we can even rule or suggest whether we have cultivators or micro cultivators or singularly, because of our population, I have no idea what a field, I don't know if this is an open field or if this is undercover.
They're all closed. They're all closed. Yeah, no fields at all.
Close. So does that mean that the odor is like argobotics?
That's an important question. But I think,
And we don't know the answer to that. I was, one of you asked if we couldn't take a field trip. I really think we're ruling on stuff we don't know the answer to.
I suspect that since it's totally enclosed, there at least exists the possibility of controlling the odor. But I think that's a key point that needs to be investigated.
That's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
And I also feel, I mean, we have targeted an area perhaps already, but there are residences all around even that. And so I know.
Have we
I
targeted
know
an area?
I know economically, we shouldn't
We
even be
haven't-
thinking about this, Paul.
We haven't targeted an area yet.
no, that's the point. That's the purpose of today. Well, I will say, and I'm going to go over a couple of things that, we actually, back when we were working on the land use chapter, we did list marijuana production as I think it was a craftsman industrial use, which actually, so that kind of limited when we can go through where those were allowed. I actually think that it has to come out from underneath that definition because the craftsman industrial was required to include a showroom or sales space, which I don't believe you can do under the statute with marijuana. So you're either a cultivator or you're in sales. You can't be both. You can't be growing it and selling it on premises, I don't believe. So Vera, I can look, obviously I believe there's probably medical marijuana producers currently in state. So we may be able to see if we can arrange a field trip to understand odor. But as with Paul, it basically, the statute refers and says that, the commissioner will set up regulations, but my sense is, again, it's all going to be enclosed for security purposes. When you look at, having taken a tour of Nature's Medicines, that facility, and I remember talking to the building owner at the time it was going in, the state requirements for security for that building, all of the product is kept in a vault. Every door in that facility is locked. So I cannot imagine that they would allow basically field cultivation of marijuana.
It can't be fields and it can't be greenhouses. It has to be a warehouse type building. But why don't, instead of starting with producers, why don't we start with retailers?
Well, and that was, so I just wanted to, I have a whole chart that I'm just going to work to so that we can work to fill in. In terms of just kind of a few other things, and I went through this with Ryan, some things for the council. We talked to the town attorney. Technically, the council could also, regulate this. So I think having a joint meeting makes sense. I think you guys make more sense in terms of, regulating where, how these may be allowed, if they're going to be allowed. There are some things that do fall under the council. So one is use. So regulating where you can use cannabis in town. And so we've kind of alerted Ryan and the town attorney, the current ordinance related to the use of tobacco products should probably be reviewed. And the town has to decide whether it wants to allow smoking of cannabis on municipal property. As well as one of the other regulations looking through the statute is we can determine whether or not we want to allow smoking of cannabis as part of outdoor dining. So that's
something we don't do. Okay.
Huh?
No, that's something we don't do.
Okay. So
right.
Again, that's gonna be the town council, but What we cannot control or what they cannot control is if it's in food. So you can't, so you can say you can't smoke it on in an outdoor dining area. You cannot say that you can't have
To consume.
a brownie or something else. You can eat, so you can consume it in a different way. I know Ryan had a question because he was in Mass when Mass went through this. There are no local agreements allowed. So in terms, we have 30 days from the time a facility opens to recoup public safety costs to a maximum of $50,000. There is, I think is very, you know, there is a financial component to this, which is, I believe it is 3% of gross receipts from retailers, hybrid retailers, and maybe micro cultivators actually flow to the town. So Ryan and I kind of looked through that ordinance to see how that works. So if the town decides that it wants to allow this somewhere, you know, there is some potential money that comes in. There are limits on how that money can be used. So
Are we limited to one retail outlet?
So we are limited by so our new population is, I wrote this down and I don't know where.
25,300. Yeah.
What?
25,300, I think.
No, it's 25,892.
Oh, okay. All right.
That is according to the census. I will
We
tell
get-
you, I was pleasantly surprised because I really thought we were going to drop below, just given when the census happened, that we were going to drop.
So we get one retail outlet, right?
One retail, but what's interesting, so we can have one retail outlet, one micro cultivator, and honestly, it has not, because we're over 25,000, it's a moot point. I'm still not clear on if you have less than 25,000 people, you get one. Like, it's just the language is kind of murky, but that for
Okay,
us,
but we do get one.
we get one retailer, one micro cultivator.
Now, does
However-
that mean one retailer and one dispensary, or just one of any
No,
kind?
the only thing that they place limits on is our retailers and micro cultivators.
Okay, so we can have
So-
one retailer and unlimited
So-
number of dispensaries.
You can, and that you could also, that also means that there's no limit on the number of hybrid retailers you can have, which is basically a dispensary facility combined with recreational sales.
That makes no
So-
sense.
Huh?
That makes no sense to put a limit of one on the retailer and no limit on the hybrid.
So I didn't make the rules. We're just,
I know, I understand.
you know.
So basically what we need to do is decide where they would go in Mansfield.
So, and so the way, and I reviewed this with Cannabis, or with Kevin briefly the other day. So under cannabis establishment, and this is what is in the chart that is up on your screen, and in your packet, the definition of cannabis establishment includes multiple terms. And so I put the definition of each term there. So there is basically a variety of cannabis establishments. The first one is a producer. So it's my understanding that is producer of medical marijuana. So that's, you know, if you're a producer, so that's one type. Dispensary facility, again, this is medical marijuana only. So this is where, you know, and for all of this, you need state licensing. So there, you know, that's one of the big things that you have to get under this process. A cultivator, is compared to a producer, is someone who is essentially growing cannabis, but it's in an establishment with not less than 15,000 square feet of grow space. So, so basically solely used for cultivation, growing, propagation, and it does not include space where you're curing the plants, processing them, or storing or manufacturing products. So that it's only the grow space that's regulated at that, you know, not less than 15,000 square feet. So this is where things are not gonna lie, this confused me, and I don't know if this was intentional or if this is one of those things where everyone's tinkering with a 300-page bill and no one realized that the numbers don't seem to match. So a micro cultivator, again, you know, is cultivation and growing of cannabis in a establishment containing not less than, so at least it has to be at least 2,000 square feet. And cannot be more than 10,000 square feet prior to any expansion authorized by the commissioner. So, but then when you go and look at the section that deals with expansions, a micro cultivator can ask to expand their grow space in increments of 5,000 square feet annually until they up to a total size of 25,000 square feet. And when they hit 25,000, and if they want to go more, then they have to convert to a cultivator license, but they don't have to go through the cultivator license lottery. So as you can see, it's a little odd because per the definition of cultivator, it's a ceiling, it's a minimum of 15,000 square feet. And yet on this one, we're saying you can actually go up to 25,000 per commissioner approval before you have to be a cultivator. I don't know if that was intentional or not. It's just the reality.
I would propose that for today, let's forget about the growing of cannabis and see if we can
You
come
just
to
want to deal
some,
with, okay, so then
let's
we
deal
have,
with the retail today. I think that's a big enough
okay,
bite, part of it to chew on today.
so we have retailer, hybrid retailer, and then the other services we have, just to run through them so you know what you need to think about, is food and beverage manufacturer. So basically you are, what it says, you're, you know, making things that include cannabis. Product manufacturer, again, making things with cannabis, presumably other than food. Packager, delivery service, and transporter. And then some related terms, you know, the other, while cannabis establishment does not include the term lab, I did put it down here just so that, because that's, you know, that's one of the things where quite frankly, I could see in Mansfield that you do have, you know, you with the university in particular, you may have labs that are basically want to do research on these. And if it's on state property, you know, research on Yukon property, that's Yukon. But if you have someone who wants to do research off Yukon property, that could be something we need to look at.
This is where this is where I wish we were together and we could look at the map together.
So I'm gonna put the map on the screen.
Okay, put a map on the screen.
So
let's talk about where retailer, hybrid, or dispensary might go if we want any at all.
Okay. So dispensaries, just so you know, currently we consider office. So because of the restrictions that really the only people that can go in there are those who have a prescription. And I believe you need to make an appointment. The determination was made years ago that was an office use.
So we at the present time, we can have offices in planned business 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right?
You can also do it in neighborhood business.
And stores center.
Yep.
Okay.
So looking at the map,
Yeah, I wish it were bigger.
working on it.
Okay, all right.
Then we're just going to start at different ends of town. So
Okay, that's a good way to do it.
This is 195 and 32. So kind of northwest corner of town. So we have some neighborhood business in this light green. So where the Exxon, the optometrist is. This turquoise color here that you see is currently zoned for professional office. I think the one that I'm actually familiar with is Farino Realtors. So this is Timber Drive here, 195 Four Corners.
And that's where we did or do have a dispensary.
Correct. Your dispensary right now is on this property. So anything that's in the pink or the blue, we allow office there. I believe I'd have to check. Oh, that's right. I can't pan with this on the screen. So, you know, this is research and development, light industrial. I'd have to check again. This is all Yukon property. So we honestly don't need to discuss it because we don't control it. Institutional, you can have office, so anything that's in gray here, you know, some of this is Yukon property and campus, some of it, when you get down to here, this is E.O. Smith, Town Hall, Community Center. Store Center, Paul, as you mentioned, this light pink is what remains of the planned business too.
Now, I believe the state regulation says that it cannot be visible from a high school, right?
I'd
is
have
that
to.
Is
I'd
that the
have to go.
dispensary or the retail? One of the two.
I'd have to go and look, because what it says for retailers, what it says for cannabis establishments is that the municipality can create basically restrictions on how close you can be located to certain uses.
Right.
So you could say, you know what? No, we're not going to allow a retailer in Store Center or, you know, the PB2 or.
But you have to be 21 to go into the building, right?
Paul, I did not have time to read through.
Okay.
All
I think
300
it's 21.
I had to parse it and kind of look for what was relevant.
Yeah.
So the purple area here, the gray, Store Center, and the dark green, the light pink, again, this turquoise color here. This is a small business zone, so that's where Liberty Bank is. So another area. So in what I should also note, in the pink, so the planned business, the neighborhood business, so this is Spring Hill. In those zones, we do allow retail by special permit. So those are places today. And again, one of the reasons we did this moratorium was because the statute specifically said, if you don't address it in your zoning regulations or your ordinances specifically, you have to treat it the same way you would treat a similar use. So absent the moratorium and looking at regulations, we would have to, wherever we allow retail, we would have to allow a cannabis retail establishment. What I will say is that the statutes are specific in saying that a micro cultivator and a retail cannabis retailer are required to get special permit approval. So this is one case where they basically said, if you're going to allow it, it has to be a special permit for those two types of cannabis establishments. So there's no place where you could just do it permitted, at least for the pure retailer and micro cultivator.
So that,
You know,
means
my-
that means it always has to go through public hearing.
Correct. My suggestion, however, again, that I believe applies only to the retailer and the micro cultivator. My suggestion would be that, you know, if we're looking at this, probably you would also want to apply the same standards to a hybrid retailer. So i.e., you know, where you're selling both recreational and medical marijuana.
By the way, the Alton, you know, our Spring Hill Inn, of course, is for sale.
Yes.
Oh, do you know anything about that, Vera?
No, I don't. I just know that the heritage sign is up for it.
Because, you know, when they spoke to us, they seemed like they were going to hold on to it forever.
Oh,
Well,
well,
I think it's actually, even before that sign was up, we got calls like last year or several months ago about this. I think the pandemic just really
yeah.
hit hard. They had a restaurant that I think
Pulled out.
literally looking at opening in March of 2020, because we were doing a sign
Yeah.
through the Historic District Commission. Never happened, you know, so he's got ground floor restaurant space he hasn't been able to lease. I'm gonna guess that visitors dropped off significantly as
Yeah,
well.
going to be a hard sell because a restaurant's not going to survive there unless it's a really good one.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's too
So-
bad.
So so Mansfield Center, again, this is where we have two different kinds of neighborhood. So looks like we have some professional office, but then also neighborhood business in that location. And then as you come down, light pink here is your planned business one. And then this is the Pleasant Valley Commercial Agriculture. So I need to check, but there may be retail allowed there. And then this dark purple is your planned business 5. So, and then if I were to kind of go up and pick up the east or the west side of town, the other commercial district we didn't show your neighborhood business is you have Mansfield Depot and Eagleville,
Right.
as well with that. So
Who did they Mansfield?
My feeling on neighborhood businesses is there's not enough parking usually for.
my suggestion would be, I think, especially for the, as more states legalize this, my guess is you may not be seeing the crush of traffic that you kind of saw, especially in Mass. I think when Mass first did this, there were like 2. So I think the more there are in the state, the less traffic you're going to see associated. But, a starting point may simply be to say, you know what, you may want to look at this and say, if you want to have a dispensary in a neighborhood business district, okay. But again, I think one of the things to realize, if you look at Nature's Medicines, I'm sure you notice the bars on the windows.
Not very pretty.
No, but that is a feature of the security. So
Yeah.
that's the other piece of this, is to think about, what comes with that. But those bars are there because it was a state requirement.
Okay, well, let's start with the dispensary by itself.
All right.
And so I'll throw something out and see what people think. How about allowing that by right in planned business zones and store center, but not in village businesses?
I think I'm okay with that, except I'm not sure that planned business has that kind of, I expect it will be heavily used between, I don't know what Willimantic, what Wyndham will do, but certainly the Yukon population.
But this is the dispensary only.
So this is medical only.
This is the medical one.
Oh, well, then I would agree with that.
Okay.
All right. So
When?
Paul, that was planned business.
1, 2,
store
3,
center.
4, and 5 store center and not in the villages.
But by right.
By
no
right,
special Permit.
no special permit. That's the easy one.
Yep.
Okay, and I would lump together hybrid and retailer. It's really the same thing. They're both retailers. And then we need to think about where to put those. And I would put those in a more limited number of places, but I'm not sure how to think about that.
I think to Vera's point, thinking about so parking,
Yeah.
things of that nature. So, you have right now you have 5 planned business zones in downtown. And so then the other piece of it is, do you want to include kind of the separation distance restrictions that similar to what we used to have for alcohol, basically? And I think that's what they're going back to. So schools, houses of worship, I want to say it was like military facilities. There was a whole list that you can add a separation distance if you want to have that.
What did we do for store center in order to have liquor sales there, even though it was close to the high school? Did we make an exception, or what happened there?
Store center I think was exempted from a lot of the regulations,
Oh, okay.
but you guys actually got rid of all the liquor separating distance restrictions.
Oh, okay, all right.
Several years ago. You did basically you looked at this and went, we don't need this. And so
I would be inclined to try to get it into store center, if only to help store center survive. They need some businesses there.
Okay.
Maybe something in the far end, not facing the high school.
Do we, the separation distances, do we need to think about that in terms, if we're not doing it for alcohol, do we need to do it for cannabis?
I don't think so. But there is something specific in the statewide bill that you cannot be within 500 feet visually from a primary or secondary school.
There's,
I'm gonna have to look for that because I did not
Okay.
see that. Paul.
I thought you
there may-
could do it, but I didn't think you had to, but
Yeah, I
Oh,
didn't.
oh, okay. Right, we
It
need
was,
to, we need
it
to look
was,
at
I
that.
think it was towns could regulate it, but
Okay,
Okay.
let's check back on that, but maybe we can get 500 feet if we go into the back of Store Center or something.
There's
I
a
don't know.
daycare back there. Whether that
Oh,
matters.
that's right.
I think we need,
So,
I think we need not to be in the middle of a daycare and
That wouldn't look good.
Well, I think you also need to get a business perspective on whether or not that would be a plus or a minus for Store Center, frankly.
Maybe the committees can help us on that.
Exactly.
but it's funny because when you think of a retail cannabis establishment, you kind of, I have a couple images, right? I've in Denver,
Yeah.
It's like boom, boom, boom. There's tons of them. Then
Yeah.
I got trapped in, I can't remember, somewhere in California. It was this beautiful, very wealthy, like, reminded me of, I don't know, a nice downtown. It was this it was designed really well. You would never even know what it was. And it looked like I was going into, I was just curious. So I went in and it was just very well designed. So isn't that something we want to think about?
I've seen some very nicely designed ones in Seattle too.
Yeah,
where
like it.
That would
and
fit into any neighborhood, really.
You wouldn't even know. It looked like
Yeah.
you were going into like a makeup shop kind of.
Mhm,
That's what,
yeah.
like a Sephora, but
Yeah.
even nicer.
Yeah.
that's
So
in the design, but I still think we need to distance ourselves from the schools.
I would agree.
all
I
right,
mean,
so,
otherwise we're gonna catch a lot of heat for that, I'm sure.
Yep.
so what I'm hearing is planned business, special permit, maybe
and let's
store
get some-
center,
And let's
But
get
you-
some advice on that.
but store center with, is this something that, and I honestly, I think the partnership would probably comment on whether they
Yeah.
wanted to see it downtown. I think.
Yep.
So
They may just-
store
they may
center is
just-
your
They
question
may
mark.
just say, we don't want it at all, and so that make it easier
Yeah.
for us.
Or they might want the business, so you
Or
never
they
know.
may really want it.
Yeah.
But so whatever district it goes, whatever zone it goes into, it's going to have to follow those design guidelines that we have there. So yeah. So
It does. I think the one thing that we don't know yet is what the state's going to require. And again, think about nature's medicine, the bars on the window, that was a state requirement. So if the state says, yes, you can have this, but you need to,
you think about like CVS, they're selling oxycodone, like why don't they have to have bars on their windows? I mean,
because I think like anything else, this is where when you first, I think when you have something like this that is fairly controversial, you start out piling a lot of regulations on it, and then as people figure out it's not is as bad as they thought it was going to be, they peel back some of that. But I don't know if we're going to have any. I'll have to go through the statute more to look to see if there's security, anything specific on security, or if that's just going to be in regulations drafted by.
One logical place would be North Eagleville, just off campus. That'd be a good place to get our 3% of the sales. And
Well,
far
and again,
from schools.
so there's only going to be one pure retailer in Mansfield, period. So whoever, if we allow it, whoever is first to come in and get a special permit, that is your one
Mhm.
pure retailer. I think what you're going to see is now the question of the hybrid retailers. So, then, in terms of, because there is not a limit on the number of hybrid retailers by population. So, but that, I
Hybrid
don't
would
know.
seem to be good for the North Eagleville area.
Okay.
Do you know who bought the church by this fire department?
Oh, someone did buy it?
it was sale pending. I don't know if it's closed yet.
You
That
don't
would,
know.
maybe we can convert a church to a marijuana dispensary.
I really thought that would be a neat thought.
Well, I know the realtor, so I can call and suggest that to it.
Well, they've
Oh.
got solid walls if they need protection.
There's
And I
not a
don't
lot
think they
of
have a
windows
set,
in there.
I don't think they have a septic though. I mean, well, yeah.
No,
Oh.
they have a septic. I think, no, I know they do not. Our septic system, I believe, is on their property, I think is how it worked. So,
Oh, the fire department is on their property. Uh-huh.
yep.
But probably room for another septic anyway.
So no, I talked to Steve a while back. They were talking to a few different people, so I don't know where they.
Certainly the southern gateway is a possibility. Somewhere around there.
So basically basically what I'm hearing is your planned business zones with maybe the exception of planned business 2, because of that's where storage center is. That's your kind of your
It's
remnant.
2, okay. Yeah, I think we need advice on that. But otherwise, all the other planned business with a special permit.
Okay, and then you want to add a separation from schools.
I think children are our focal point on that. I think it should be from schools.
Yeah,
Can we limit the age of the school, like daycares and elementary schools as opposed to, because that's gonna, where could it go in store center if it's not, like you've got the daycare there and you've got E.O. Smith. So,
I'm actually I would be more concerned with proximity to EO than I would to a daycare.
Thank you.
I mean,
Right.
daycare kids are not going to be trying to go in and illegally buy marijuana where EO Smith kids for sure are. You know what I mean?
yeah, let them continue to buy it illegally.
And I see it as a drive-through at the new planned
Yeah.
by Champagne. I see that as what they'll try to do as a drive-through there.
Also,
Sure.
parking could be an issue at storage center, which parking might be easier in
There's a
some of the other.
garage. There's a parking
Yeah,
garage.
there's a parking garage, but especially
Nobody
if
uses it.
if there's a crush, nobody uses it. Yeah, especially if there's a crush of cars, that wouldn't be good.
Hmm.
But let's
So-
get some advice on that.
Okay,
I think wherever it is, we need special permits so we can
Yep.
out at that specific site.
Okay,
well,
well, we got,
again, for a retailer, that is absolutely, it's already required by
Yeah.
statute. So what we're gonna treat hybrid retailers and retailers the same.
Yeah.
And from what I'm hearing, and so that will be a special permit.
okay, we're done with dispensaries, retailers, and hybrid. We can go on to
Okay,
production.
so
Are we?
Paul, I just found in the white paper from from CCOG, what I think you were referring to.
Uh-huh.
And it says there's restriction on signage. Related
Signage, okay,
Signage, so
okay,
signage cannot target or be designed to appeal to individuals under 21, claim or imply that cannabis products have curative or therapeutic effects, be visible to the public within 500 feet of an elementary or secondary
That's it.
school ground, recreation center, childcare center, playground, park, or library.
it was the signage, yeah.
It can't include the words drugstore, pharmacy, apothecary, drugs or medicine shop, or any advertising any specific brand or kind of cannabis product. So
So if it goes into storage center, we just have a discrete sign. People will find it if they want it.
well, and what's interesting to me is like when I look at this one caveat. So I'm going to throw this out then, and this is a quite kind of like one of those questions for Kevin. Like, if the name of my cannabis store is The Shop,
Mhm.
and it doesn't advertise anything that says cannabis, does that mean I can't have a sign that says The Shop that's visible from educational play care?
The signs are pretty discreet in store center of all the stores. So I think they just have to continue.
Yeah,
following
that's
those.
why where it says signage is prohibited from, being visible to the public within 500 feet. So that, or a library. So we have a library downtown, so that's the signage piece of it. So it's not that the establishment itself can't be there. It's that you need to control what you're putting on your sign.
I
I
think that-
still, I still worry about kids popping out of school and popping down there.
No, I have, what I have on my notes is that for Plan Business 2 and Store Center, that you want to get input from other committees, including the partnership on whether or not that's
Doesn't mean
something.
the signage, everybody's gonna figure that out if they want to.
Huh?
It doesn't matter that the shop is not
Yeah.
advertising the product.
Yeah.
Everyone's gonna figure it out if they
Yeah.
want.
In 15 minutes. I mean, it's a small
Oh,
town.
3 minutes, try 3.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I think we've covered the sale.
I think you have covered the sales. See,
Okay,
you're
let's go on to production. Now, one of the possibilities for production would be to prohibit it in Mansfield.
That's my first request.
And that would make it crystal
But
clear that it's,
I really do it on the basis of odor. And I don't know. I wish we could go see. I mean, maybe I could go see on my own, but that's not what you want for.
I think the ideal place for this is an old mill, and we don't have a lot of old mills.
Without people right around it.
Yeah, like the Willimantic Thread Company and some of those that are still left over.
Or the Kirby.
Yeah, there's somewhere. I don't think, we don't have an industrial zone in Mansfield that's far from houses.
No.
I was poring over the map yesterday. I can't find a place where you could put obnoxious odors.
Well, I have a friend who is a plant scientist who works for a producer in Massachusetts. I could ask her if they have odor issues, how they ameliorate them, if they do, just to get a sense of it. But the bigger problem is that this is really subjective, right? Like what I might consider an unpleasant odor may not be considered one to you.
Right.
So I'm not sure that there's any objective way to measure it there and therefore regulate it. So
Yeah, it's hard to regulate.
Yeah.
so
I suspect that Mansfield does not have a comparative advantage in the types of buildings needed for this.
well, I guess here, I'm gonna ask a question here.
Yeah.
Because what we do have is I thought about this, I'm like, where, when you start talking, so again, we can only have one micro cultivator, so that's 2,000 square feet up to 10,000, could potentially grow up to 25. I think, for a cultivator, you're looking at a minimum of 25,000 square feet or 15,000 square feet rather. And so my question, and again, is going to be probably more down in the PB1 district where you have larger buildings that maybe, so Eastbrook Mall, the shop, think of your kind of big box shopping plazas where as things change and retail has a harder time, is that a possible reuse of
maybe even Champagne Motors
of those spaces, in terms of production. But I think to be, what I'm hearing is that most of the concern regarding production is odor. And we can see one, Vera, I can see if we can do a field trip to one. We could not do a field trip when Agbotic was pending because you were dealing with a pending application. Because I did have multiple requests from different members saying, hey, can we take a field trip to the one in New York? Can we take a field trip here?
Why would that not be appropriate so that we'd have a better feel for ruling? I don't think
that was from the town attorney. So, it was, but I think in terms of
consultant, because we only had in evidence the pro and the con and nowhere impartial.
Now, thinking of another possible place in Mansfield, what about the old driving range on 32? Is there a piece of land around there that would be far enough away from houses? Could we find a place like that might be acceptable for a micro cultivator?
It's always grown in a warehouse. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. So you have to build a brand new warehouse.
Yeah.
Well, what about in the opportunity zone? I mean, if somebody's building something new, it seems like that would be enticing. And then the other question that I have is it because this is all have to be in a building that it's not considered agriculture? Like, why is this not regulated as agriculture.
I think they specifically removed it from
Okay.
agriculture.
Yeah,
They-
it's not
they-
agriculture.
They specifically,
That makes sense because
So the
it's-
opportunity zone,
they literally, I think, amended the definition of agriculture to say does not include this.
Sure.
so
Okay.
the opportunity zone would be Mansfield Depot and then going up past the
Yeah.
Depot
That's
campus
heavily-
up toward Four Corners, right?
That's heavily populated though.
Although maybe the old prison would be a good spot,
I think that'd be
but
fun.
we have no jurisdiction over that.
We
Yeah.
don't, and I don't know if they can do this on state land.
Hmm.
So,
Well, the state could sell some of that land.
Yeah.
That
Um,
would seem, if you want isolation, that would be the way to get it.
Or maybe we should have put a bug in their ear.
Now that we're on good terms with the university.
Deal with hemp
Oh,
and
now.
we're working on rebuilding our relationship.
So my opinion is,
one-sided.
my opinion is leaning toward prohibiting this. But I think we should allow the industrial part.
Hmm.
So after it's already been produced in the mill in Willimantic, bring it up to Mansfield and produce it in a factory, and we can get a lot of money by producing the product rather than growing it.
No, the
can't
money,
do that?
the money, the
One shot.
yeah, the money only goes with retailers, hybrid retailers, and micro cultivators. That's
But,
where,
but we would get the money in the sense of having people working and
yeah,
a small
yes, but
factory.
you, I just wanted to be clear, you're not getting a percentage of,
Yeah.
of sales receipts. If you don't, if you say, no, you can't do this anywhere.
But I think that might be the sweet spot for Mansfield to produce the product. Although we don't have any old mills for that either.
Hmm.
But that could be done in new buildings, I
Right.
suspect.
I think we should get a little more technical information about how odor is controlled in production, because
Yeah.
it seems to me like if they're all over the place, there would be a lot more outcry.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
the odor was really a problem. And, the odor issues that we were hearing about with Agbotic were specific to greenhouses, which might have
Yeah.
a completely different
Completely different, yeah. Yeah.
like permeability, I guess, to odor than
So
an indoor facility.
How far away is that place in Massachusetts that you know?
Well, I mean, she commutes from Ashford, so it can't be that far.
Okay.
I can check in.
Yeah, why don't we see if we
I
can
can find out.
get it, and that's in production.
Yeah. Mhm.
That
Yeah,
would be
she works
fast.
in the research part of it. So, they're like doing the research on developing the tiny plants, but the business is a cultivator, and
Okay,
I'm not sure if
alright.
she works at the
So-
cultivation part exactly, but
I just did a quick Google. So there are 4 licensed production. This is an article from March of 2020 from the Current. 4 licensed production facilities where marijuana is grown and processed in Connecticut. So Simsbury, Portland, West Haven, and Watertown. So I think what we can do at a staff level is reach out to the planners in those communities and say, hey, you actually have, marijuana production going on.
Simsbury would be the closest, right?
too.
Or maybe Portland.
Maybe Portland, but I think,
I would be fascinated just to see what these are like. And we're really flying blind here. We really need a lot of information.
yeah, so it says, so Simsbury's Curaleaf, I guess, actually moved in November of 19 to a larger space that has about 60,000 square feet.
Wow.
And the interview says, it positions them to move into the adult use market if it's legalized, because this was, again, March of 2020. So they have about 60, yeah. So.
So let's do a field trip and get some more information before we decide on production micro cultivator.
All right, I will tell you that we just because it's fascinating, and it's in the article. Every person who enters the cultivation and production section must wear hairnets and pocket-free scrub-like clothing.
Hmm.
I can do that.
So, we'll see what, again, we'll reach out to our counterparts, and then we'll also reach out to these companies and see if we can get a tour.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the industrial part of it, because I'm a little more optimistic about that being a possible source of jobs in Mansfield. Maybe something like the old mill in Mansfield Center. They still have lots of space for lease there.
Kirby Mill?
You mean Kirby Mill?
Kirby, yeah. Actually, someone was thinking of putting a brewery in there, right?
Hmm.
No, they want to make wine.
Oh, a winery, a wine,
Yeah,
okay.
so you did give them approval
Okay,
to
so,
make wine, but not sell wine. I think you
Right.
may be getting a request, after with the proposed ordinance changes and proposed regulation changes, you may
now,
see. a
it's too
request.
bad we don't have a lot of industrial space for lease or sale, and that's part of the reason we don't get the startup companies spinning off from Yukon. And we've
No,
talked
Paul,
about,
you're talking about the food and beverage manufacturer, the product manufacturer, product
Yeah.
packager,
Right.
those.
right.
How
Now,
big
there
are-
is an example in Coventry of a company that's doing this CBD infused drink.
Hmm.
I'm not sure what kind of a building they're in, but that's the kind of businesses that could be interesting for Mansfield as well.
Wilcox and Reynolds has that place.
Oh yeah, which is they've never been able to rent to anyone. Good idea. And that's relatively far from the nearest house.
But I
Well-
mean, are we concerned with odor with that?
Not as much. Yeah.
So I'm going to assume you do not want to allow, because one of my first thoughts when I saw food and beverage manufacturer, I'm like, well, is this something you want to allow is kind of in your cottage kitchen, i.e. your home business?
I think we're looking at something that would be on water and sewer
Okay.
and yet industrial. Do we have anything like that in town?
No, I mean,
Would that go anywhere in Four Corners?
I think my get for if you're looking at water and sewer, for the food and beverage manufacturer, then I think you're looking at Plan Business 1, Plan Business 3 are your options there.
One is south.
So down by Eastbrook Mall or Four Corners.
Right. Those would be the most likely spots. So Plan Business 1 and 3.
That land that's just to the right of Petco and that little thing. What is
Oh
that?
yeah. Oh,
Has anyone looked to develop that land at all? Is that in Mansfield, first of all? I assume it is.
There is a lot in Mansfield, a parcel.
Is it Anna? Is it a separate parcel from the Petco?
I believe so.
that's a good spot.
Hmm.
And that would have water and sewer. Now, the state land from the highway extends for some distance.
Maybe it's not. I'm looking.
I think that's part of their parcel. Their
Yeah, it is.
parcel
Yeah,
extends
yep,
to the
I'm
right
wrong.
of way.
But there is one to the back. I don't know if that's flood hazard though, behind it.
We want to avoid a flood hazard.
Yes, we do. I have to look though.
No, the one that's behind it is actually R20.
Oh, okay.
There
Oh, and
might
there's
be,
house. Yeah,
There might be room to squeeze a factory in there even now. It's got way too much parking.
Well, again, I think, you know, some of these may be thinking about reuse of buildings. The bowling alley. If the bowling, you know, I don't know how the bowling alley is doing, but you know, so is PB5. So if you're not, I mean, one of the things you can do, and you know, it may depend on the types of products you're manufacturing. You may not need water and sewer.
Right, right. I guess I would allow that in any planned business that has to be appropriate for the use.
So with the exception, I'm guessing, of planned business 2 and 4, so that's Store Center, King Hill Road.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't.
Center and what, and Linda? Store center and where?
And King Hill.
So the planned business 2 is by Store Center, and the planned business 4 is King Hill Road. So basically saying no production or packaging in those areas.
Is is that private property that we tried to develop? That's still private property?
King
Yukon
Hill
did-
Road has one Yukon parcel and the rest is private.
But they need the sewer and the water, so that's a no-no, I guess. Although that was only no-no for building apartments, so maybe.
Right.
would-
Well, and I think, again, one of the reasons we're doing this exercise now is so that we can go to these committees, Town Gown, you know, the Downtown Partnership, the Economic Development Commission, the Agriculture Committee, and say, this is the general framework that we're thinking about in terms of where we might allow this and under what conditions, and
King
get
Hill-
their feedback.
King Hill might be a possibility, but I don't know if the church would have something to say about it.
The church is pretty
They're pretty
separated.
far. They're pretty far from there.
Well, with the exception of the
Synagogue.
Friends meeting,
Oh, Friends, right.
George
Yeah.
Friends meeting.
The one on Hunting Lodge Road.
So, but again, I mean, it's packaging, it's, you know, so you're talking about manufacturing and packaging, not sales. But
Right.
again, I think the other thing to think about when you talk about that is what scale are you looking at?
Mhm.
You know, if you're doing small scale manufacturing and packaging, some of those locations may be okay, but if you're doing large scale and you need semi trucks, King Hill Road is not your site.
No, no,
Yeah.
32,
Store Center is not
195.
your site. You know,
Yeah.
it really, so again, I think that may come into, but if you're doing something small scale, again, you know, if you're a specialty baker, that may be something that you go, oh, okay, you know, if you're not selling it, so.
Well, what about like across, that's neighborhood business, but across from Thompson's store, there's that vacant parcel where the restaurant used to be, and that building that I think Thompson's uses just for storage, or someone just uses for storage. There's definitely a good chunk of land that could be.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
neighborhood business, and so
yes,
that
something
becomes,
like that.
the question is that if you allow it there, you're allowing it in a lot of other places.
Yeah.
You might not.
Yeah.
All right, so what I'm hearing is planned business, and we'll maybe in the PB2 and PB4, if it's a size restricted operation and you don't have. All right, so the other ones that we have are delivery service. Well, a transporter is just a person who's licensed to transport, so.
So if you're going to base a delivery service someplace, that would also be planned business.
Okay. And then laboratories, again, it's not technically a cannabis establishment, but do you want to set parameters on laboratories that are doing research on doing analysis? So basically the labs are doing analysis of cannabis to make sure it meets the licensing requirements. So you're sending samples of your product to them so that they can say, yes, you're within the parameters that the state has set in terms of.
That could be the same as any other laboratory. I mean, even the one we approved in Mansfield Center.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of place where we allow labs right now, so we need to,
Oh, okay, we specifically,
but yeah, I think that's gonna be part of our next discussion, honestly. So
okay.
you guys actually, quite frankly, made it through. You-
We're ready to go. We've been resting since March.
You just built a framework in an hour.
We know what we want.
So what I'm gonna, just so you know, what I'm gonna do with this is I am going to take that chart that I had sent to you that kind of had the prohibit, allow kind of note section, fill that out based on our discussion today and add it to the packet for Monday so that you can share it with the rest of the commission and see how people feel. And if you want to make any change, if the commission wants to make any changes to that before we take that out to advisory committees.
Okay, good
Sound
plan.
like a plan?
Yep.
All right. So the
And
next,
let's meet again on other topics also.
you're not done yet.
Oh, we're not done today.
You're not done
Got
yet.
time. I got time.
So this one shouldn't take long, but I just wanted to run through, we had actually started talking about this honestly before the pandemic, and we thought we would have lots of time during the pandemic to work on it, and that did not happen. But one of the things that Jen, Jolene and I had tossed around was that to move the full rewrite forward, one of the things that may help us is literally if we just start with reorganizing what we have into the framework we want it to be in. And then we can come back later and then you can kind of tackle it a little bit easier, if that makes any sense. That's kind of our thought. So I think I had initially put this together pre-pandemic. And I'm gonna throw this up on the screen so everybody can see it. So this, and so just kind of, this was put together, I will say I used, Hartford had put out a typical steps for development as kind of their baseline of like, here's how you develop. And I was like, well, that's actually interesting. And maybe that's an organizational framework for the regulations. Like, what are the first questions? So first question, what are you zoned? Second question, what is that zoning district? What's the character, are there specific requirements? Is the use allowed? So what you see here is the idea of, okay, we're going to, have the first thing that we're going to talk about and in the zoning regulations is going to be zoning districts and kind of actually grouping them, tying it back to the POCD. So for example, that you have your residential neighborhood. So your R20, R90, RER90 zones, and you group them together. Here's what they're intended to be. You have the dimensional requirements there. So instead of going to one big chart for everything, the idea that we had before of, if you're really just looking to do single family, can we make it as easily as possible for you to figure out what you need to do? Uses, going to, one chapter on uses. Right now, we're actually split between two. We have prohibited uses in one chapter, permitted in another. And then affordable and workforce housing. So we have, making that its own chapter. General provisions, and this quite frankly is almost a catch-all, but some of the things that we were thinking about is, utilities and infrastructure. So those requirements, for example, if you're connecting to Connecticut Water Company, what do we consider, water and wastewater requirements, and things such non-conformities, things like that. Trying to group together, like, how do we deal with, right now we have our Article 6 is very long in terms of performance standards. And so, but a lot of them really deal with resource protection. How are you laying out your site? What do we require for site work, erosion, sedimentation control, stormwater management, things of that nature. And then getting into some of your more technical standards. Landscape, we don't have a lot right now, it'll be kind of short. Access and parking, lighting, design standards, signs, and then taking all of your administrative stuff and putting it towards the end. So does that seem like a kind of way, like a starting place. And then there may be tweaks that we make, there may be some things that, for example, looking at, converting, because I think the last conversation we had was, can we convert our uses to a table? So maybe that becomes maybe uses becomes part of this. I do think one thing that has to be part of this is any changes we need to make based on recent statutory changes. So that as part of the reorganization, we're also tackling the same, if there's, removing the word character unless we have specific provisions, dealing with the parking space requirements that were put in. So if people think this is a kind of a good starting point, then we'll work on reorganizing all the regulations and bringing that back to you in a package. And we can talk about what else to put in there.
Yeah, that looks like a good way to organize it.
Okay. Now you can talk about future meetings, Paul.
Okay. Can we get back to getting a discussion about getting rid of some of the R90?
I think so. So trying to figure out capacity wise. So let me put that on here and we'll see if that's something that maybe, so you want to try and tackle the residential changes as part of the overall reorganization.
Yeah, and that's a big piece of the affordable housing concept too. That, the R90 is like the poster child for what we should not be doing.
All right.
And I think particularly in areas where all the houses are 40, we shouldn't insist that they be 90.
All right, let me see what I can pull up and come up with, and I think we'll get our consultants working on that. I'll have to get a new contract with them. They did split off into a new firm, so
Again?
no, this is they did this last year. So if you recall, when we hired CME, which turned into CHA, we specifically, said, look, this is really tied to John and Mike. They were the people who we interviewed with. John and Mike have left CHA and started their own company. So the CHA transferred us over to them, even though we didn't really have an active contract. I don't know, maybe we did.
So where are they located now?
Vernon.
In Vernon, okay.
They actually, I think, are in one of the ground floor of one of the mill buildings in Vernon.
It helps to have some old mills.
It does.
Well, we're gonna have some old schools. Does that count?
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. Yeah, we can utilize them for something.
Well, and that's, one of the things that maybe coming, there is a facility study that's starting, because somebody was in here doing an air test in my office for 10 minutes yesterday. So they're definitely starting on the facility study. So
could you grow cannabis in an old school gym?
As long as the children are gone. Yeah.
Just saying.
Well, and maybe right now those are all zoned RAR 90. Maybe you make that a institutional or something, and say you can do it in institutional zones.
Yeah, we could have the police department on one side and the cannabis on the other.
There you go.
I mean, Vinton School would be nicely sited.
Yeah.
So there you go. Like I'm gonna throw I districts in here for these and kind of put a question. Institutional. Do we want to?
So we're talk to us, Linda, a little bit about what the university is planning to do at the university
it's not on our agenda, so I can't.
Oh, it's not on. Okay, all right.
Special meeting, you can't add it.
All right.
So
you can talk about it Monday, right?
I can provide a director's report on Monday.
Okay,
Excellent.
Good. All right. Good. Better for the whole commission anyway.
So it looks like, we have had 3:30 meetings scheduled for the year. It looks like that is a problem now. So we're probably gonna have to just do special meetings for the rest of the year, and then we'll, but figure out what time works for people for setting up next year's calendar, which we have to start working on honestly in the next month or so anyway.
Good.
So, but with that, that is it.
Okay, very good. Very productive meeting.
I would just make a point too, that I think I was the problem child for the 3:30 on Thursday meetings. And I have 2 Thursdays a month that are fine. It's just I have 2 that are not. So if that is something that would help, I can
Okay.
get the siting council calendar and figure out what days, what actually days are problematic.
Yeah, that may be very helpful.
Sure.
And then Ken, I think it's literally a time of year for him. Where it just sometimes afternoons are okay, other times they're not. So, all right. Well, thank you,
Very
everyone.
good.
Thank you. Good to
Bye-bye.
see you all.
Bye.
Yep.
Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.